You've thrown away money. Maybe not today, maybe not last week, but at some point, walking a trail or poking around a creek, you picked up a clear, glassy little stone, turned it over in your hand, decided it was just worthless quartz or a chip of old glass, and tossed it back. That stone could have been worth more than its weight in gold. This happens far more often than you'd think. The most valuable stones in nature aren't always the colorful ones. Some of the most overlooked treasures are plain, white, and clear, exactly the kind almost everyone walks straight past without a second look. And here's the part that fools people the most. These white stones are constantly mistaken for diamonds, and that confusion cuts both ways. Some people get all excited, thinking they've struck it rich with a diamond when they haven't. Others toss aside a genuinely valuable gem because they assumed it was nothing special. The truth is simpler and more useful than the diamond dream. Gram for gram, a fine, clear gemstone can be worth far more than gold. You never needed a diamond to strike it lucky in the first place. Think about what that actually means for you. Instead of chasing the 1 in a million odds of a diamond, you're learning to recognize a whole family of clear and white stones that show up far more often. They're in creeks, road cuts, and old digging grounds all over the country. Any one of them, in the right quality, can be a real reward for an afternoon of looking. The only thing standing between you and those stones is knowing how to read them. So here's the real question. How do you tell a worthless white pebble from a white gem worth a small fortune when so many of them look almost identical to the naked eye? That's exactly what this video is going to fix. I'm going to show you 5 white and colorless stones that can be worth more than gold, where each one hides, and the simple signs and home tests that tell them apart from each other, and from the common lookalikes that fool beginners. The very last stone on the list is the easiest of them all to find, so even a complete beginner has a real shot at it. Stick with me all the way to the end, because by then, you'll never look at a plain clear stone the same way again. The ground you need to look at isn't mysterious. It falls into 3 kinds. First is pegmatite, a coarse, light-colored rock. Basically granite with crystals, so big you can see them without a lens. That's the classic home of topaz, beryl, and large clear quartz. Second is gravel, the loose stone that lines creeks and old riverbeds. Hard, heavy stones like sapphire and topaz survive being tumbled for miles, and they end up piled together where the water slows. Third is volcanic ground, old lava fields, silica-rich rock. That's where opal is born. So when you're out walking, 3 things should make you stop. Light-colored coarse rock with big crystals, creek gravel, and old volcanic ground. Now, the tests. You need almost nothing: a piece of glass, a steel knife or file, and your own hand. Start with hardness. That's the first gate. A stone that scratches glass is already more interesting than most ordinary rock. The harder it is, the shorter the list of what it could be. Then, weight. Many gems are denser than common rock, so a stone that feels surprisingly heavy for its size is a promising sign. Then, luster, the kind of shine. These gems show a bright, glassy shine, not a dull, chalky surface. And the final reveal is the simplest. Wet the stone. Water makes the true color, clarity, and shine leap out. It's the fastest way to tell a lifeless pebble from something with real life inside it. Keep one thing in your head the whole time. The most common imposter by far is plain quartz, with cheap glass running a close second. A big part of this game is ruling those 2 out. Glass often gives itself away with tiny round bubbles trapped inside, or a faint seam line left by its mold. No natural stone ever has those. Quartz has its own tells. Once you know what real gems do that quartz can't, carry a rough hardness ladder in your head. Your fingernail is soft. A copper coin is a little harder. A steel knife blade and window glass sit around the middle. A hardened steel file is harder still. So when a stone scratches glass, but the file scratches the stone, you're somewhere in the middle. When a stone shrugs off the file completely, you're looking at something genuinely hard like sapphire or topaz. None of this needs to be exact. You're just sorting stones into soft, medium, and very hard. That alone narrows the field dramatically. And remember, no single test is the whole answer. You're stacking clues, hardness plus weight plus shine plus shape, until only one stone is left standing. That habit of combining checks is what turns a lucky guess into actually knowing. Which raises the obvious question, what does the first of these stones actually look like when it's sitting in your hand? Let's start with the first one on the list. White sapphire. This is colorless corundum, the exact same mineral that gives us blue sapphire and red ruby, just without the traces of other elements that paint those stones their famous colors. It forms deep in the earth, in rocks that have been cooked under intense heat and pressure. And because it's so incredibly tough, it survives the grinding, tumbling erosion that reduces softer minerals to dust. So it ends up concentrated in gravels, waiting. In the United States, Montana is the great sapphire state. Colorless and pale stones turn up in several of its gravel districts, and corundum shows up in other old metamorphic areas too, including parts of the southeast. So creek gravel in country with any sapphire history is your strongest bet. Now, how do you identify it? White sapphire's superpower is hardness. Corundum sits at 9 on the 10-point hardness scale. Right below diamond, it scratches glass and quartz effortlessly, while almost nothing you find in the dirt can scratch it back. It's also dense. It feels noticeably heavy for its size, and it keeps a bright, glassy shine even when the surface has been worn smooth by water and grit. It often turns up as rounded, barrel-shaped pebbles with a faint six-sided outline at the ends. The simplest way to separate it from quartz is that very hardness. Quartz is a 7. It cannot make a mark on sapphire, but sapphire scratches quartz without even trying. And here's a quick test you can do right on the spot. Sapphire pulls warmth away so fast that a breath of fog clears off its surface almost instantly. A soft glass fake stays misted for a moment longer. It's a small thing, but it's a telling one. So why does it beat gold? Because a clean, colorless sapphire is a real brilliant. A far tougher stand-in for a diamond, and a good clear stone is worth many times its weight in gold. That makes any heavy, glassy grain that refuses to be scratched a stone worth stopping for. In Montana, the classic spots are the gravel bars and benches along certain rivers and old mining creeks. Generations of people have screened that gravel for these tough little stones. So any ground with that kind of history is worth a look. One more clue. Unlike the next stone on our list, sapphire has no easy direction of splitting. It breaks in irregular, uneven surfaces, not clean, flat faces. That's one way to tell the two hardest stones apart when both are scratching your glass. As for value, it comes down to how clean and clear the stone is, how large it is, and how bright that glassy shine returns after a polish. A clean, colorless sapphire the size of a small pea can already be worth many times the same weight in gold. A cloudy, cracked one is more of a collector curiosity. Still a genuine sapphire, just not a jewelry grade 1. Either way, the moment your glass refuses to mark a heavy, shiny grain, you are almost certainly holding corundum. And corundum is always worth a much closer look. But here's the problem. Sapphire isn't the only stone that will scratch your glass. There's another one, nearly as hard, that looks almost identical. And telling the two apart takes a completely different set of clues. Topaz is a different animal. It comes out of pegmatite too, that coarse, light-colored rock with the oversized crystals, and it washes down into the same gravels. Utah's Topaz Mountain is the famous spot, known for clear and sherry-colored crystals. Texas has its own prized blue topaz. Colorado produces it as well. Light-colored coarse rock, and the creeks below it, that's where you're looking. On the hardness scale, topaz sits at 8. It scratches glass and quartz cleanly, though it's not quite as hard as sapphire. But two things really set it apart. First, it often forms long, handsome crystals with flat faces. Second, and here's the double-edged sword, it has one direction along which it splits cleanly, almost as if the stone wants to break flat straight across. Quartz never does that. That clean splitting direction helps you identify it, but it cuts both ways. Knock a good crystal hard enough, and it can chip or split right along that plane. So handle your finds with care. Fresh topaz has a slick, almost soapy feel to the surface, and a bright glassy shine. What a clean piece, and it lights up with real clarity. It's also heavier than average for its size, noticeably denser than quartz. When you're holding two clear stones of the same size and one feels distinctly heavier, that heavier one is far more likely the topaz. Now the honest part about value. Plain colorless topaz on its own? Fairly common, modest in price. But it's constantly cut and sold as a diamond look-alike, and large, clean pieces carry real value. The wider topaz family stretches all the way up to golden and pink imperial topaz, which sells for serious money. So a fine, clear crystal is still very much a find worth keeping. One thing to know if you ever dig Topaz Mountain, the crystals grow inside cavities in a volcanic rock called rhyolite, and many come out a pale amber that quietly fades to clear after time in the sun. And when it comes to what's worth money, size and clarity rule. Small clear topaz is plentiful and cheap. A large, clean, flawless crystal is a different story entirely. So now you've got two hard stones that can both scratch glass and shrug off a file. Sapphire at 9, topaz at 8, nearly identical in the hand. The next stone is softer, and it looks completely different. A 6-sided column that could easily be mistaken for quartz, and that's where the stakes get interesting. Beryl is the family name behind emerald and aquamarine. And just like topaz, it grows in that same coarse, light-colored pegmatite, washing down into the gravels below. The old pegmatite districts in California, Colorado, Maine, and across New England have turned out beryl in many forms for a long time. The stone itself is hard, about 7.5 to 8 on the scale, so it scratches glass without any effort. But its real signature is the shape. Beryl grows in long 6-sided columns, like a pencil with flat ends. Once you've seen a few, you can't mistake it. That blocky, flat-ended column is also the cleanest way to tell clear beryl from clear quartz. Quartz can be 6-sided too, but it tapers to pointed pyramid tips. Beryl stays blunt and squared off at the ends. Now, on its own, goshenite is the plainest member of the beryl family. It's modest in value and easy to overlook. But finding it matters far more than the stone itself. It tells you're standing in beryl country, the exact same ground that produces aquamarine and even emerald. A plain, clear beryl isn't the prize. It's a map pointing straight at far more valuable cousins hiding nearby. If the shape leaves you unsure, there's another way to separate beryl from quartz. Beryl is a touch harder, so a sharp edge of beryl can lightly scratch a quartz crystal, while quartz can't return the favor. Beryl also runs a little lighter than topaz for the same size. Weight, shape, and that small hardness edge together settle it. And because beryl loves the same coarse pegmatite that carries the most valuable stones, the smart move when you find a clear beryl is to slow down and work that whole outcrop carefully. Aquamarine, morganite, and other prized members of the family may be sitting in the very same pocket of rock. The honest value picture is simple. Clear goshenite is the budget member of a rich family. Modest by itself, but its real worth to you is as a flag because it grows shoulder to shoulder with stones worth a small fortune. Treat it less as the prize and more as nature quietly telling you that you're standing in exactly the right neighborhood. Which raises a question: what happens when the rules change completely? The next stone isn't hard. It isn't even a crystal, and it can flash rainbow fire from a milky white body. Number 4 is white opal, and this is where the rules flip. Every stone so far has been a hard, heavy crystal. Opal isn't either of those things. It's not a crystal at all. It's a solid made of silica and water locked together, and it forms when silica-rich water seeps into cracks and slowly dries out. You find it in sedimentary and volcanic ground, not in hard granite. And here's the part that makes it the most beginner-friendly stone on this list. Nevada, Idaho, and Oregon all hold real opal country, and some of those grounds are open to the public. You pay a fee, you dig, and you keep whatever you find. A white opal has a milky, translucent body. The thing you're hoping to see is play of color, shifting flashes of green, blue, red, and orange that float inside the stone and move as you tilt it. That play of color is exactly what separates precious opal from common opal. It's soft for a gem, only around 5.5 to 6 on the hardness scale, so it won't scratch glass the way the harder stones do. That softness is a useful clue. A clear or milky stone that flashes rainbow colors yet feels soft is very likely opal. Wetting it makes those colors come fully alive. So why does it beat gold? A white opal with strong broad play of color is genuinely valuable by the carat. The famous black opal is the king of the family, but a good white opal still leaves gold far behind, gram for gram. A milky stone with rainbow fire inside is never something to toss aside, and plain opal with no color play has a name potch. Potch itself isn't worth much, but finding it is good news because it forms in the very same ground as the precious stuff and often means better material is close by. One word of care. Opal holds water locked inside it, so a stone can crack as it slowly dries over the years. Keep a good find somewhere cool, never bone dry, and never left baking in the sun. What separates a cheap opal from an expensive one comes down to things you can judge with your own eyes. Strength and breadth of the color play bright, bold flashes covering the whole stone are worth far more than faint sparks in one corner. The body, a clean, even background, lets those colors pop. And the pattern large, organized patches of color are rarer and more prized than a fine, random speckle. A white opal that ticks those boxes can run from tens of dollars a carat into the hundreds and well beyond many times the value of gold by weight. And that rainbow fire is exactly the kind of thing you want to see more of. Subscribe, and I'll show you the stone that fools everyone into thinking they've struck it rich. That brings us to the fifth stone, the one you will trip over more than all the others combined. Clear quartz, also called rock crystal. It shows up in pegmatites, in veins running through almost every kind of rock, and tumbled smooth in creek gravel just about everywhere on Earth. You will run into it far more often than the four stones before it put together, and that is exactly why it matters so much. Now, here's the part that fools people the most. Quartz is a 7 on the hardness scale. It scratches glass easily, and that is precisely why beginners get excited, convinced they have found something rare. The truth is simpler and more useful. The four stones before it either behave differently or are harder. Sapphire and topaz will scratch quartz, while quartz cannot scratch them back. Opal is softer and flashes rainbow color. Beryl forms flat-ended, six-sided columns. Clear quartz, by contrast, usually grows six-sided with pointed pyramid tips, shows no play of color at all, and sits right in the middle of the hardness range. So learning quartz really means learning to rule it out, and once you can spot plain quartz on sight, every genuinely valuable white stone suddenly becomes far easier to recognize. There is a famous example that proves the whole point. In New York, sparkling naturally double-pointed quartz crystals have long been sold to tourists as Herkimer diamonds. As clear and brilliant as they are still quartz, not diamond, not even in the same world of value. Quartz also tends to break with smooth, curved, shell-like surfaces rather than flat faces. It has no easy splitting direction the way topaz does, and it often feels cool to the touch. All small clues that stack together help you call it correctly. Let me be straight with you. Ordinary clear quartz is common and inexpensive. It is not the stone that beats gold, but it is without question the most important one on this list to know, because it is the great imposter that hides all the real treasures. Learning it protects you from both throwing away a fortune and getting your hopes up over nothing. And even then, certain exceptional quartz crystals and fine specimens do carry real collector value, so it is never entirely worthless either. Do not write it off completely. While the plain clear stuff is cheap, the family quietly hides real value in its colored forms. The purple amethyst, the golden citrine, and clean, well-formed crystal points that collectors genuinely pay for. But its greatest value to you will always be as the teacher, because every hour you spend learning to recognize ordinary quartz on sight makes spotting the truly valuable white stones almost automatic. And that skill is about to point you towards something else hiding in the very same ground, a stone most people walk right past without ever knowing what it holds. There's one more stone hiding in that same ground, and it might be the easiest one to miss of all. Moonstone. To the untrained eye, it's just a cloudy white pebble. Nothing special, but tilted under the light, and something strange happens. A soft, floating blue glow drifts across the surface, like a piece of moonlight got trapped inside the stone. And a good one is genuinely prized. That glow is the whole lesson in miniature. The plain white stones most people ignore are very often the ones hiding the most. Moonstone is far from the only example. The world of pale, overlooked gems runs deep from glassy danburite to the milky shimmer of certain feldspars. Each one is another stone the untrained eye writes off as worthless. Each one is another treasure somebody else steps right over. The more of them you can name on sight, the more often you'll be the one who quietly picks up what everybody else missed. That's the skill this whole video has been building. Learning to look at a single plain stone and not guess whether it's worthless or worth chasing. You build that ability one gem at a time. And every stone you learn to recognize makes the next one easier to spot. You've spent the whole video learning to read stones. And now you know the truth. The most valuable ones aren't the flashy, colorful ones. They're the plain, white, and clear ones everyone walks past. That clear, glassy little stone you picked up on a trail or down on a creek, the one you tossed back because it looked like worthless quartz that could have been a sapphire. A topaz. A beryl. The only thing that separated you from a fortune was knowing how to read what you were holding. And that's the real skill. Not luck, not guesswork. Knowing. The 5 stones, the 4 tests, the habit of stacking clues, that's what turns a dismissed pebble into a recognized treasure. It's a skill you build one gem at a time, so subscribe if you want to keep building it with me. And tell me in the comments, what's the most interesting stone you've ever picked up and walked past?